Welcome to the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. There is so much noise on the interweb these days about what women should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to their fitness and health. Not only is it all too often tied to shame and fixing our bodies, it can also be incredibly detrimental to our health and wellness overall. The Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast sorts through the BS and offers advice and actionable tactile steps to support and build a better relationship to your amazing body through every stage of womanhood. It aims to break the cycle of keeping women in the dark about their extraordinary machines and revolutionize the way we move, eat, and live so that our daughters and our daughters' daughters look in the mirror and feel exactly what they are: fierce, beautiful, and capable of everything. The revolution starts here. Hello, and welcome to the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. Kinsey here, and oh, how pumped I am to be here. Today, we are talking part dose of how to make the most out of your group fitness class for peri and postmenopause / really anyone who's looking to build some muscle. So let's just call it how to build muscle in your group fitness class of choice. As promised, I've been a little off schedule with this podcast. Life got nice and lifey. It's very cold here. Just a casual -20 this weekend. No, that is not an exaggeration, and that's not wind chill. That was just sans wind. So we've been hit with a couple different colds. If I sound nice and raspy, I'm on the tail end of a little one myself, so enjoy the smoky vocals. Let's see what else is up. I'm also going to try this one. I'm sorry, is going to be a little bit longer episode, and then I promise going forward they're going to get a little bit shorter. You know me. I'm kind of all over the place with length. So for those of you who like long podcasts, you're welcome. For those of you who don't worry. We'll have all sorts of variation, but I am going to try to get it in under the wire because we've got trivia tonight, and I don't want to brag, but we kind of are big deals. And by we, I mean my group is amazing at trivia. And I every once in a while go, mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell. And that's about all I've got. But it's fun to go and eat pizza. So let's just dive in, shall we? Today, part 2. Thanks for checking back in. To recap, the biggest thing I'm looking for to help women and really any human who plans on living is to help you build muscle, right? So last podcast, we talked about how to find a group fitness class just to make fitness a little more accessible, get you started. Today, we're talking about now we've found that group fitness class that checks all of those boxes we were looking for. How do we use it to build muscle? And why do we want to build muscle? TBH, Dr. Gabby Lyon always puts it the best in my book. Muscle, this is her, by the way, although I wish I could take credit for her brain. Muscle is the organ of longevity. Think of muscles as your body armor, protecting you from illness, injury, and the inevitable challenges of aging. A fall in your 30s, you brush it off. A fall in your 70s could be life-threatening. Here's the reality. At least 30% of older adults die within a year of a hip fracture. Individuals with the lowest strength face more than double the risk of death within the next decade. And muscle doesn't just impact mobility. It plays a critical role in metabolic health, blood pressure, and cognitive functions. Studies show that having more muscle can help predict better survival rates in older adults. And the great news, skeletal muscle is the only organ that you have voluntary control over. You can build it, strengthen it, and protect it no matter your age. Muscle is not just a marker of strength, it is a critical determinant of survival and longevity. So thank you, Dr. G. She goes on to say, invest in your muscle span today because the strength you build now shapes the quality of your life tomorrow. I told you, she's brilliant, forever strong. Read it, tell me about it, listen to her podcasts. Anywho, and here she's just talking about how essential muscle is for aging well. She didn't even touch specifically on the critical role for postmenopausal women. Postmenopause let me start over. Menopause-related hormone changes predispose women to sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle, and osteoporosis, bone loss, which is oftentimes why women tend to, well, one of several factors why women have a higher tendency to have osteoporosis, osteopenia. And if you're looking to nerd out on this, I'm going to include a fun link to a research paper entitled Muscle and Bone Mass in Middle-Aged Women, a role of menopausal status and physical activity. It is a banger. If you like graphs, you're in for a treat. But this deep dives into some of the mechanisms that cause a decline in muscle and bone as our sex hormones go on their midlife roller coaster. My point here, if it hasn't become abundantly clear yet, it's simply not enough when it comes to group fitness to rock your core in Pilates or drip sweat in hot yoga or jack your heart rate up in a HIIT class or even fling a barbell around in CrossFit. Yes, absolutely. All of these styles of training have their own unique benefits, but beyond a certain amount of time, newbie gains, they don't build muscle. And that, my darlings, is absolutely what I want to focus on in this transition of our life. And to all my humans in their teens, their 20s, and their 30s, ideally we start focusing on it before, because the more you got going into aging, the better. And it's also just easier to tack on as we're younger. So get nuts, you know? So part 1, like I said, we talked about finding your group fitness. Part 2, let's talk about how to optimize your group fitness experience to build le muscle. 5 things that we have control over to maximize muscle gains in that studio you choose. So how do we make sure we're building strength? The 5 big things we can control. 1, I alluded to this a little bit in part 1, but the big thing is that we want to make sure that when we're lifting, that we're able to reach our point of fatigue and rep ranges. There's a whole other podcast where I go into detail on what it even means to hit our fatigue and asking ourselves the question, am I lifting heavy enough? I'm going to put that link in the show notes. But basically, at the end of each set, ask yourself, how many more reps of this exercise can I do? Reps meaning times that I do the exercise. If you finish, let's just say, chest presses and you've done 10 of them, and you ask, how many reps could I still do? If the answer is 5, let's just say, you could definitely go a little heavier or slower. If you say maybe 1, maybe 2 reps, you've probably chosen your correct weight. We want to have 1, maybe 2 reps left in reserve, as the kids say. This also means that every couple of weeks, you should be exploring heavier weights. Doesn't mean you have to stick with them the whole time, but we do want to sort of start to dance up the weight rack. I'm going to tangent really fast. I did a fast little Instagram post on this today, but another thing that we can talk about later in detail is you want to make sure that somehow you're keeping track of the weights you're using for major movement patterns. So squats, deadlifts, overhead press, chest press, lunge, row, so that we can tell over time that we're actually starting to build. It also helps you kind of know what weights to grab initially, but that's a topic for another time if you'd like it. Point is, let's say we start with a 20-pound goblet squat. Chances are, as you do your goblet squats over time, you're going to start noticing that you have more and more of those reps in reserves, aka more reps you have left in the tank. So maybe it started with you hit 20 pounds in your goblet squat and you're like, wow, I got to 10 and I am pooped. But after 2-3 weeks, now we get to 10 goblet squats with that 20-pound weight. And we're like, yeah, I could keep going. I could do 2. I could do 3. I could do 5. I could do 10 more. Jump up. Next class. Add 5 more pounds to it. Tack on 25 pounds. Probably you'll be surprised with something like a squat or a deadlift. Major muscle groups might go a little faster. Don't be afraid once your form is ready, hence the importance of an instructor who pays attention to your form, to go heavier for less reps too. So first things first, always, form is queen. When your form is good and you're ready to take it up in take it up in weight, it might mean that we dial back our reps a little bit. I would much rather have you hit 8 reps of a beautifully performed 80-pound deadlift than 20 reps of a 30-pound deadlift. Of course, let me say it again. Form has got to come first for safety and for not wasting our time. To put a number on it, if it makes it helpful in terms of like what we're lifting, when we're thinking about rep ranges for building muscle, or again, the amount of times that we're doing an exercise, the science shows that hypertrophy, or the build of muscle, happens within that 8 to 12 rep range. And you may say, but Kinsey, in my circuit, I work for 8 minutes straight and my muscles feel totally burnt out by the end. Is that the same in isolation? Generally, no, right? Because if you can do something for 8 minutes, we're not really, first of all, if it's just one exercise, just go up and wait and save yourself some time. I mean, if it takes you 8 minutes to hit fatigue, yeah, technically you're going to hit hypertrophy, but probably we're thinking about something more like an AMRAP, as many reps as possible with a couple different movements. And this is absolutely going to help your muscular endurance, which is the amount of time you can perform something under fatigue, but it doesn't necessarily, again, especially after a certain point in your lifting career, build muscle. This is where I was really coming up against the wall when I was doing primarily CrossFit. I'm very good at AMRAPs. I can go and go and go with pretty heavy weights for a long time, but my muscle mass wasn't changing. I was staying at the exact same of muscle tone. I was getting more powerful and maybe even stronger, but my body composition wasn't changing, which is pretty trippy actually. So thinking 8 to 12. And the other kicker is we need rest. Our muscles need to rest. So whether it's taking intentional 30 to 90 seconds between those sets. So I do 10 squats and then I rest 90 seconds. And then I do another 10 squats and then I rest 90 seconds. And then I do another 10 squats and I rest 90 seconds. The other option would be supersetting opposing muscle groups. So think 10 chest presses into 10 rows. So one side of your body is working while the other side gets to rest, because your chest and your back are antagonists. They work opposite sides of your body. So if I'm doing a chest press, my back gets to rest. If I'm doing a row, my chest gets to rest. That way, especially in like a group class setting, when you have limited time or you're trying to fit in more movements, that's one way to go up in volume a little bit. But we want to let that muscle start to recover and restore before putting it back under tension. Again, that's going to be the difference between building muscle and just getting really good at muscular endurance. Oftentimes, in a group fitness setting, this will probably mean that you have to start making a couple of changes on your own. It's hard to say without knowing what group fitness you're in, what that's going to look like. Feel free to reach out with questions and we can troubleshoot together. If you want to hit me up on the Instagram or shoot me an email at kinsey.diamond@gmail.com. I just made eye contact with my chihuahua from across the room and he looks so sad. Anyway, moving on. Number 2, get creative with progressive overload. Eventually, last episode, we talked about how one of my favorite things about Orange Theory is that our studio has 90-pound dumbbells, which is pretty dope. But eventually, you're deadlifting those 90-pound dumbbells like a champ. But oh crap, you've got more than 2 reps left in the tank. So how do we continue to progress when we run out of weights? I got you. I'm going to give you 2 options here. The first one, and my favorite one, is slow down, aka adding more time under tension, where you're forcing your muscles to work against gravity for longer, creating more muscle fiber recruitment and eventually adaptation, or in this case, growth. Like I said, this is my favorite path in this case. While theoretically adding more reps creates similar stimulus, the only reason that I'm a little bit gun shy to put that one out first is that I find too many women have spent most of their lives and time in the gym doing a million reps without ever hitting that failure point. Remember, that can be exactly what we're looking for muscle endurance, but I won't do diddly squat for growing that coveted muscle tissue. Although, to be fair, if you're rocking those 90s and you need to go up in weight, you clearly aren't afraid to lift heavy, so going to 12 reps instead of 10 reps, a chef's kiss. Another version of this, if time permits, would be trying to hit an extra set of the exercise. So instead of 3 rounds of 8, could you find a way to fit in 4 rounds of 8? Maybe if it's something like a circuit style class, you just go ahead and take out that filler core move for the day and add in a 4th set of those reverse lunges with dumbbells. Okay. So moving on. 3, include multi-joint compound movements and single side movements. Big compound movements like squats, hinges, overhead press, etc. are gold standards for strength training, muscle growth, and movement health. There is a time and a place for targeted exercises like clamshells and bicep curls, and I would argue they're also really important to hit. Clamshells, for example, I feel like every single person who's ever done PT for their low back or their knee or anything lower body has been prescribed clamshells. So obviously they're important. But when we're talking about muscle growth in terms of full body, if we aren't moving our body as a unit, we're missing a huge component of activating stability as well as strength in both our core and those larger muscle groups, the largest ones in our bodies, right? Not to mention neuromuscular control, aka our brain-body connection. That's why when people ask how I feel about exercising on machines, here's the deal, especially if you're new to fitness or, you just aren't feeling like lifting with dumbbells or barbells one day. Machines are great. I love that they're there. They're great for isolating strength. They're great actually for hypertrophy. You'll see a lot of bodybuilders do it because you're literally isolating one muscle group. You don't have to work on the stabilization. You're able to really put a ton of time under tension in a pretty darn safe manner. But we don't force our brain to move our body correctly through space. And remember, the majority of exercise is training our brain. And here it is. That same paper I told you to nerd out on before made this super fun killer point, which they said, and let me know if we need to break this down more. Decline in muscle mass is one of the mechanisms underlying the age-related deterioration in muscle strength. Sure, we knew that. However, the age-induced decline in muscle strength may be up to 3 times greater than the decline in muscle mass. So strength up to 3 times greater than muscle mass. Why? Stay tuned. Suggesting that neural and muscular or muscle quality related factors have a notable effect on muscle weakness and old age. Basically saying that neural pathway starts to either slow down or go away completely. So when we're doing these major compound movements, we're not just training our muscles, but we're continuing to re-strengthen these neural pathways. How cool is that? I know. You guys are all going to be reading this paper and you're going to be like, dang, Kinsey, what does this word mean? And I'm going to be like, I don't know, because I only understood 75% of it. Anywho, it's worth the read. Point is, we got to think of movement for longevity, and that's a pretty darn good way to think about it. So why single side movements? Single arm rows, lunges, etc. A, they are absolutely non-negotiable for working to illuminate muscle imbalances, aka a huge source of movement impairment and injuries. So I've probably talked about this a million times. Stay with me if you've heard it. But a lot of times, if we're not training one leg at a time, chances are when we're doing something that's two-legged, like a squat or a deadlift, part of our body is firing more than the other part. So when I gave myself that super fun injury 2 years ago during a squat, it was because my right side was firing stronger than my left side. And I had not been doing a lot of unilateral training. Now, she's practicing what she preaches. And you know what? It's making a big difference. It also just gives you the idea. You'll feel it right away. All the time, even now doing this, can notice smaller and smaller imbalances. But do me a favor one day and practice lunging for 10 reps on your right leg and then lunge for 10 reps on your left leg and tell me which one feels different, right? Same with overhead presses. If you go one on the right, my left one always poops out a little bit more. It takes time, right? But you'll notice if you break it down that, holy cow, I'm just going to say it, probably 80% of us have, probably more, but let's just say 80 to be kind, have muscle imbalances. And that's okay. Of course we do. It just, once we are moving in a certain movement pattern, our body will continue to move that way until we correct it. It just follows the path of least resistance. There's a whole law about it. I'm pretty sure it's called the Davies Law. Someone's out there like, no, it's not. It's where your tissue forms upon, or your movement forms your muscle tissue. So anywho, I'm not going to go too much into that without giving you the actual name. But the point is, we all have them. No shame there. Single leg, single arm, single side movements help us both find them and correct them. And B, especially as we're talking about muscle building in group fitness classes, if you run out of heavy weights, switching to a move that's single-sided is a great way to make it twice as heavy. So if you're running out of weights for your squats, put it on a lunge and bada bing, bada boom, you're using one leg to do the work of two. One of the things that I fell in love with day one as a client at Orange Theory was their emphasis on single side movements, aka unilateral training. Building in timing for sets that work both sides of the body opens up a huge potential to get stronger and to move better overall. This, especially the gym that I worked at before I left LA, was a big box gym. So our group fitness studio didn't have weights that went above, I think it was just 15 pounds. And especially for those lower body compound movements, you tap out of that pretty darn fast. But if you throw someone into a lunge or a single leg deadlift, again, when form permits, we were able to sort of extend the longevity of that particular movement to keep that person challenged in a way that they were, for a while at least, continuing to build muscle. Remember, this isn't just strength training, it's longevity training. So we're just working to get stronger and move better overall. It's chasing your grandkids around the yard training. It's putting your own damn bag in the overhead compartment training. It's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in your 70s on your girls' trip because y'all be training. So do yourself a favor and find creative ways, again, to get a little spicy with the weights when you're ready and when form permits. 4, I've had a lot of tangents on this one, you guys. We just got an espresso machine, side note, and I'll tell you what, I'm here for it. I've been cutting coffee and I've been trying to cut energy drinks, which I've been doing pretty well at, except for when I open, because you guys, I'm up at 3 a.m. when I open. So that's my little treat for being up hours before the sun. But espresso has been a lifesaver on days that I am not doing an energy drink. So obviously I had one before this. You can probably tell. Let's get back to our program, shall we? 4, aim for 10 to 20 sets of a single muscle group each week. What? Whoa. We're getting gray here. Listen, no, we're not. All this means is that we want to hit each muscle group 10 to 20 times a week. And I'm talking sets, unfortunately, not reps. The longer we've been training, the more sets we're going to need, which is why at some point we might need to start supplementing with outside strength training like I have recently. Doesn't mean you have to give up the fitness classes that you love. Listen, I'm still doing Orange Theory 2 times a week and I'm loving it. But it was time for me to start doing a little bit of strength training on my own outside. So how do you know if you're close to hitting this 10 to 20 sets per week? Well, keep track. Okay, bye. Just kidding. It doesn't have to be hard, right? It can be super duper easy, simple as a log on your phone, or you can keep a little journal, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Make it as easy on yourself as possible. How many times a week did you hit the front of your thighs, your butt, your back, your chest, your shoulders? Ideally, 10 to 20 times each. So as an example, if a station in your workout has 3 rounds of 10 goblet squats, 3 rounds of 10 TRX chest flies, and 3 rounds of 10 tall kneeling shoulder presses, in that class, you hit 3 rounds of quads, 3 rounds of chest, and 3 rounds of shoulders. So you'll need at least 7 more sets of each by the end of the week. It can get kind of tricky, but this can be a really good way to start being mindful if your classes are providing you with what you need to get stronger. Again, no shame. We're just getting information. So if you are doing the class and your class has you doing 85,000 hinges and you're never lunging, or you're always working chest but you've never rowed, pretty good indication that maybe that programming is not the best to stick with long term. I recently had a consultation with a woman in her 60s. Yes, in her 60s the other week. And she's part of a very popular gym that on paper has it going on. It's got all the things, right? It's small group training. It emphasizes small or strength training, and it has you working to failure in each muscle group. What? We love it. We love to see that. I'm here for this. But as she was telling me about it, I was noticing everything she was describing was that she wasn't really seeing the results she wanted, and it didn't really sound like she was getting stronger after 5 years of being there. Why? So I asked her a little bit more. I asked her about the setup of classes. One, she's been doing it 1 day a week for 5 years, which again, no shade. Everybody's got their own busy lives. And honestly, if you can hit 1 lift a week for 5 years, that is freaking incredible, right? You have stayed consistent. But it might not get us to the goals that we think that eventually it would behoove us to try to find at least 1 more of those days. And as I dug deeper too, I learned a little bit more about the actual class. So it was 30 minutes and it was 10 different machines, and you did 1 round on each machine and you worked your body to failure. And again, this is dope. I really love the principle of that. If they had you go around those 10 machines 2 more times, I'd be like, yep, I'm in. Let's rock. And honestly, starting out, if it's your first year, you're probably if you're doing it 2-3 times a week, you're going to find those newbie gains. But after a while, not only are we not getting enough diversity in our movements / working those major compounds in that neuromuscular control, we're just not getting enough sets per body part to continue challenging adaptation in our bodies. So even a class that's got it going on in so many respects falls a little bit short, which is why I get that it's so hard to pick a group fitness class, because unless you've spent every hour of your day in this world like I have for the last 15 years, it gets really confusing on what to look for, and when you find it, if it's even giving you what it's promising to give you. So that's it. I'm just going to wrap it there. Okay, let's go on to 5, shall we? Because we're in the home stretch. And this is specifically about finding a way to train core and stabilization, which are both hugely critical, not just for better movement, but for healthier, injury-free bodies as we age. Remember that little Gabrielle Lyon quote where 30% of people over 70 die after within a year of a hip injury. So let's change that statistic. Some gyms do a solid job of programming these. Again, here's looking at you, Orange Theory. And I'm not talking about a million sit-ups, BT dubs. I'm talking about functional core and balancing. This can look like a lot of things. It can be planks, glute bridges, squat to overhead press, TRX exercises, single leg movements, step-ups. Ooh, baby, rotation. Get you a gym that includes rotational movements and your core will be strong AF. Movement, functional, to boot. Your spine, a stable. And TBH, rotational movements, even as a cool down, can play a huge role in minimizing our back, neck, shoulder, hips, pain in all those areas. It can minimize pain. That's so cool. So if your gym doesn't do a lot of the above, and a lot of programming I see out there certainly misses rotation, but oftentimes skips balancing as well, I would 10 out of 10 recommend either getting to the gym early or maybe staying a little after to add in like 5 to 10 minutes of a warm up and or a cool down, or find a couple of days, even once a week, where you're practicing any amount of yoga, right? Because that's got all those things. It's got balance, it's got rotation. YouTube is popping for this. I just happen to have a whole bunch of great yoga vids everywhere from 10 minutes to an hour. So if you want a place to start and you're not tired of my voice by now, peep the link in the bio and have some fun. Last little bit I'm going to touch on. Yeah, we're doing bonus. And then I'm going to let you get exploring and game planning on your own approach to building strength in a group fitness class. I want to just touch on, what do I do if my class is 50% cardio and 50% lifting? This one is tricky and it's super common. First things first, when you have a choice, I want you to start on the floor with weightlifting. That way you aren't too burned out to lift heavy safely or too exhausted to lift the weights that you need to build lean muscle. Then, when you're on the cardio side, think of leaning into strength adaptations most of the time. So we're talking walking on high hills or adding a shiz ton of resistance to your bike. Then like once a week, choose the day to go hard on power. And I'm talking hella output with a lot of recovery, like 1-to-1 ratio of work to rest or more. Thinking sprint for 30, recover for 30 again, or way more. If you are in a class like Orange Theory where they program intervals for you, ask them what days they're targeting power. We literally have on our wall a calendar that shows you the emphasis we're hitting on the tread. I will show you what days you can come to do power with me. And if you're on a day where they're doing something else, give yourself permission to color outside the lines. If you're in a class like base camp, for example, where all you know is that you have a minute of air assault bike, make your own intervals. Sprint as hard as you possibly can for the first 20 seconds and then recover for the last 40 seconds. Because remember, with power training, and what makes it different than endurance training, is that we are looking just as hard at that recovery period as we are at the work rest or interval. And I would even argue that obviously the output in that power is a big deal, but that recovery is a huge deal. We are training our body to recover, our heart to recover. And the faster we recover, the healthier we are. And yes, we 100% need to be training power. Just ask Dr. Stacey Sims. We lose power up to 2 times faster than we lose muscle every year as we transition through perimenopause and beyond. And we know we'd be losing muscle. So if your classes don't give you power, find one day a week to practice on your own. Think stationary bike, outdoor bike, treadmill, rower, elliptical, battle ropes, kettlebell swings, running, burpees, really any kind of cardio will do. And again, we're thinking 30 to 60 seconds. Oh, that's kind of big. As hard as you can safely with 90 seconds to 4 minutes to recover, and perform that 3 to 5 times. Again, once a week. And ideally, not on a day you've already strength trained unless you absolutely got to. Okay, the last thing I'll say, because we just talked about power, is that I want you in general to break the idea that you have to feel dead after every workout. Do I work hard AF during my heavy lifts? Yeah, I do. Is my heart rate in zone 1 and 2 the majority of the time? Yeah. Because I'm giving my muscle groups that big old rest so they can lift heavier and heavier every time. And I'm talking like 2 to 4 minutes of straight up sitting on my phone between sets, usually closer to 2 because let's be real. But point is, I'm working on it. Am I all sorts of sweaty? Sometimes. But a lot of the times after strength sessions, I'm really not that sweaty. I am with HIIT and CrossFit. But again, years of doing this, I've learned firsthand over and over that with those 2 forms at the wheel, my body composition, that muscle to fat mass, at this point in my career, doesn't change. And especially with CrossFit, even though I love it, I spend half the time feeling super burned out. I go hard in the paint for 3 months, and then I just want to cry and rest. Dudettes, we should be so happy that strength training feels more sustainable long term. We're still going to work out harder than we can imagine sometimes, and we're always going to, well, mostly always going to feel amazing for it. But once the workouts are done, we should still feel like we have energy. We shouldn't feel totally dead, totally drained, like we're going to vomit all over, right? Okay, to wrap this puppy up, we need to be building and maintaining muscle to have happy and healthy transition through perimenopause and beyond, while also considering maintaining or building balance in core and implementing pops of power. And while the lion's share of group fitness is designed to kick our butts and make us feel dead all the time while giving us hella muscle endurance, it doesn't necessarily, and oftentimes doesn't, build muscle. When we use these classes to train to the point of fatigue with rest, aiming to hit 10 to 20 sets per major muscle group per week, we can make group fitness work towards our goal. And okay, I feel like I'm going to say the last thing like 8 more times. Never be afraid to talk to your trainer. Chances are they won't know a ton about perimenopause, or sadly, they probably won't know anything about perimenopause yet. But they should have very good ideas for how to build muscle. And if they're anything like me a few years ago, if you ask them about perimenopause, it will inspire the H out of them to learn more about perimenopause and women's health in general to be the best trainer they can be for you and their other clients. Okay, I have one more thing, and then I promise I'm going to go. And I would just be remiss if I left. And I know everyone would be like, but what about, yes, obviously, nutrition plays a huge component in the long run. Think high protein, lots of whole foods when available, and good sources of fiber. But again, that topic is ginormous, and we'll save it for another day. Today, I want you to figure out what you need to make those muscle gains in your next class, or even how to find your next class. Do some exploring. Let me know how it goes. Like I said, catch me on Insta at kinsey.does.the.fitness. I will be doing, for as long as I can manage, a fast daily fitness and health tip, so come along for the ride. And again, you can always email me at kinsey.diamond@gmail.com. I think I already said this. I got rid of my business one because who's got the time for multiple emails, right? Remember, at the end of the day, good things take time, and you and your beautiful body are so freaking worth it. Thank you for sticking around for this longer pod. I hope you got a whole lot of something, or maybe just something out of this podcast. And if you did, it would mean the absolute world to me if you liked it, shared it on social or with friends who need it, and took 3 seconds to write a few lines of a review. I cannot tell you how far it goes with the algorithm getting this out to people. I like to know if you're getting something out of it so that I know I'm headed in the right direction. But B, as a little grassroots pod, that's how we spread the word, and that's how we revolutionize women's fitness and health. All right, you gorgeous humans, you go out and have a fabulous evening, and I'm going to go watch while my team crushes trivia. Until next time, aroo!